Morning, fifth grade. Today we're going to be reading Colonial Governments on page 136 through 139. Colonial Governments. Self-government. The colonists made many laws that were new ideas at the time. Colonists demanded rights that the English thought were almost rebellious. With laws protecting freedom of speech, colonists were building a system of government that represented the people. An assembly, or lawmaking body, was guaranteed in the charters of most colonies. English kings allowed the colonies to make their own laws, but these laws had to be approved by England's government. Colonial assemblies. Sometimes assemblies made laws that protected and expanded people's rights and freedoms. Remember the Toleration Act in Maryland? Later, England would try to take some of these rights away. The colonists felt independent from England, which was thousands of miles away. Colonial assemblies gathered to make laws for their colonies. This legislation, or making of laws, was a first step on the road to self-government. Colonial governments weren't perfect. In fact, they were unfair to many groups. Women, indentured servants, enslaved Africans, and Native Americans could not vote or hold office. At first, only white men who owned land could vote. Later, a small number of men who did not own land were elected to assemblies. In some colonies, these voters also had to belong to a certain church. Governors and government. England allowed assemblies to control a colony's taxes and spending. This gave assemblies a great deal of power, the kind of power they held onto with a tight grip. Powerful assemblies. Colonists expected assemblies to represent their views rather than the views of the English rulers. Colonists saw themselves as English citizens who had the right to make their own decisions. The Virginia Charter stated that its colonists would have the same freedoms as people born in England. Colonial governors constantly fought with their assemblies. Governors were usually appointed by either their king or the colony's proprietor. Unlike the other colonies, Connecticut and Rhode Island elected their own governors. The governor's job was to represent the interest of the king or proprietor. The assembly's job was to represent the people of the colony. The governor could reject any law passed by a colonial assembly. The assemblies could stop paying the governor's expenses until their laws were approved. Without holding money wasn't the best way to solve a problem, but it did help the assemblies protect their power. Local government. How did colonial towns solve their problems? In New England and some middle colonies, male colonists held town meetings. At these meetings, colonists sometimes had heated debates about local issues, elected local officials, and made laws. Most southern colonies had county governments. Usually, the governor appointed county officials. This gave more power to governors in the South. Local courts settled disputes between individuals or answered questions about the law. Judges supervised the colonial courts. The governor and the assembly selected colonists to serve as those judges. Natural rights. John Locke believed that people were naturally good. He was an English thinker who believed that all people have natural rights. Among these rights were life, freedom, and the right to own property. Locke wrote that the main duty of government was to protect these rights. When a government failed to protect these rights, Locke thought people could overthrow or change that government. Most colonists understood what Locke meant by life and property rights, but people disagreed about the meaning of the word freedom. Thanks for reading today with me, fifth graders. I hope you have a great rest of your day.